Hey guys, I'm Allie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in February, wrapping those up. One thing that I have learned about myself, which I probably should have realized a long time ago, is that I can't stick to a TBR. I just get so excited about all of the books that I have on my shelves that I make myself a list and then I can't stick to it because I am a mood reader, so I kind of just bounce around to whatever I'm feeling. I did finish a few of the books that were on my TBR, but by and large, I think that I didn't stick to my TBR as closely as I should have. I got a lot of audiobooks because it's just easier for me to read audiobooks, so I kind of based my reading off of the audiobooks that I was getting through February, and I was just in a huge romance mood in February, so I ended up reading a lot of romance. But I did not only read romance, so let's talk about the books that I read in February. The first book that I read, or rather listened to, is the original. It's by Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette Kowal, I believe is how you say her name. I was able to listen to it through Scribd. I gave it 4 stars. It's a sci-fi novella, and it follows a girl who finds out that she is a replica, basically. So in this world, when somebody has done something terrible and they're running from the law, the government makes a replica of that person, so they have basically the same mind as the other person, but they're trained to kill. And they send that replica person to kill the original person so that the original person hasn't gotten away with whatever crime it is that they've done, and the replica person, if they are able to kill the original in a certain amount of time, they get to continue to live in their place because they have basically been bred for just doing the right thing. I thought this book was incredibly interesting. It's really fast-paced because it takes place over the course of 4 days, so you're getting basically the replica just is like, it's kind of like a mystery. So she's like following trying to do whatever her original would do and trying to think in the mind of her original and to track her down and figure out what it is that her original did and if it's true that she's the one who actually did it. And like, it's so good. I really enjoyed it. The only thing for me was that it felt too short. Like, I wanted more story because it was really intriguing. And this world and the way that the system works in this sci-fi world, it was just so intriguing. But then it was cut so short, and I love the fact that it was a quick novella that you could get into and get out of very quickly, and that the story is so engaging. But it's just, for me, I thought that there could be more world building in it, especially since it had such rich characters. So overall, I highly recommend it. It was really good, but I do wish that there had been a little more to it. The next book I actually picked up as an audiobook, and I loved it so much that I went and got myself a copy of it, and that is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. This book I gave 5 stars, and the audiobook is great too. It goes back and forth, so you get Josh's perspective and you get Hazel's perspective. There are 2 narrators for this audiobook. There's a guy that does Josh's voice and there's a girl who does Hazel's voice, and they just do them so well. And the dynamics between Josh and Hazel are fantastic. I love that they are basically acquaintances and then they become friends and then it just progresses. It's the friend to lovers trope. And I love that trope. That is one of my favorite tropes in any romance. And this one does it so well. You get some, if you've ever watched New Girl, you get some New Girl vibes. The way that Jess is with her friend group in that show, that's basically what you're getting from Hazel in this book. She's just so outgoing and she just kind of says what pops into her head. So a lot of times she might be saying something that just doesn't quite fit with whatever situation she's in, but she's so funny and she just is able to break the ice in pretty much any situation. And he is kind of, is not quite uptight, but I would say that he just lives his life in a way that's very structured. And so when she kind of cannonballs into his life a few years after college. Their friendship is just a roller coaster, and it's so sweet, and everything that they go through because they decide to like try to pick dates for each other because they basically say that both of them suck at dating, so they decide to send each other on blind dates, and it goes over in a way that I honestly believe this would be a really cute movie. I really want to reread this soon because I enjoyed it so much, and these characters are just so much fun to be around. It was just very uplifting. The next book I finished actually started back in January, and I just finished it in February, which is I was going back and forth between physical and audio. I actually got the audio so that I could get through it a little bit quicker because it's kind of slow reading. And that's Bunny by Mona Awad. I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. The only one issue that I had with it was just that it can be a little slow at times, just because it builds so much like suspense and what's going on. But for me, it felt like it kind of dragged in a few places. But this book is really good. And honestly, it is very hard to describe what's going on with this story. So you basically have a girl who is in college for creative writing. And she has... This book is so difficult to explain. I don't even know, like, how to go about saying anything without giving any kind of spoilers. Basically, there is a group of girls who are like mean girls who are in her writing classes and her workshops, and she is an outsider looking in on their group, and she doesn't like fit in with them whatsoever. So I guess she's a little bit envious of them. That's the vibe that I get from that. And she ends up being invited to go do a like writing night with them. And it's like a party thing that they do. And she decides to go. And then the story really takes off from there because it's her being a part of this group of girls who are very odd. I don't know how to explain. They're very eccentric, I suppose you could say. And it kind of gets in with their group, and she gets involved with some weird like witchcraft stuff that's going on with them, and then she has some other friends, and like it's a roller coaster. It's so hard to describe, and a lot of people see this book in different ways. Some people see it as that maybe she had a drug addiction and she was abusing drugs. I definitely think that is a part of this story. I do think that there is hints of a drug addiction in it. There are other people who think that she also had issues with some type of mental disorder. I can also see that. There are still other people who believe that this is an introspection on writing, like creative writing in general, because creative writers have to create characters and they have to make them real, and then they have to kill them because you cannot be attached to your characters. You have to be okay with killing the characters that you create. And I think that this story is just so versatile that everybody who reads it gets something different from it. But if you want something creepy and just very suspenseful, I recommend this. This is so good, and I really enjoyed reading it. But man, it did freak me out a little bit, and I'm not really sure at the end of the book what exactly happened throughout the whole entire thing. And I know that is not very helpful whenever you need an explanation for a book, but honestly, it's just a difficult book to explain. But really great. After I finished Bunny, I decided that I was back into a romance mood, which I don't think that I ever really kind of left the romance mood through the whole entire month of February. But I picked up This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins. This is a Book of the Month book. It is okay. I gave it 3 stars. I think that the story's cute. Honestly, there's not so much romance to it. You get brief snippets of the romance throughout this story, but there's not really a whole lot of interaction between the main character and the love interest. Honestly, you just have the main character living her life and figuring out her life and trying to like basically get her life back on track because it's kind of crashed down at the beginning, and she's just basically building herself back up throughout the story, and then you have the love interest as kind of a side story to that. It is super cute. I really enjoyed the writing. I think that it's a very sweet story, but it's not exactly what I was looking for, especially for like a contemporary romance feel. There just wasn't enough of the romance for me. And then also sometimes it felt like it was just kind of dragging. Her story just felt like it was missing something, just lacking like maybe a little more, you know what I mean? The next book I read was also an audiobook, and it is My Favorite Half-Night Stand by Christina Lauren. I have found that I really enjoy Christina Lauren's writing. Their books just seem to have a lot of humor and a lot of great banter between friends. So in this story, you have a girl named Millie, and she has a group of guy friends, and I think that the dynamic of their friend group is great. I loved the friend group. I loved their banter. I loved how they got along. I loved, like, when they were hanging out. They were just really fun to read about. Millie ends up helping them set up their dating profiles, but hers really stinks. So she makes a fake one because she doesn't feel comfortable putting herself out there like that, and she ends up talking to one of her best friends in the guy group as this person that she's created online. I loved this story. I gave it 3 stars. My reason for 3 stars is because I didn't like the fact that she was on a dating website talking to her best friend as somebody else. That's just a lot of deception. I understand why she did it, and I understand her perspective on the whole entire situation, but I just wasn't a fan of that particular plot. Just the way that everything resolved, I thought was really well handled, and I really enjoyed the fact that everybody was able to talk through their emotions in a very real way. I just didn't like the build-up of the relationship. That was the biggest thing that I had an issue with. Other than that, super cute story, wonderful banter, wonderful friend group, and totally worth a read. After that, I picked up another audiobook. I also had the Kindle book from NetGalley, which I was reading while I listened to the audiobook. That's The Woman Outside My Door. I gave it 4 stars. It was a great thriller. The story is about a mother who's taking care of her, I believe, 8-year-old son. He's somewhere in like 7 or 8. And she, like, at the very beginning, she has him at the park, and he comes out of this little, like, cluster of bushes and stuff, saying that his new granny has given him the candy that he's got. And she looks in and sees nobody there. And so he, throughout the story, is talking about his new granny, and they believe that he is dealing with grief from losing his grandmother, I believe like 6 months prior to when the story starts. And so the father doesn't really take the son seriously, but the mother believes that there is either something supernatural happening or that there is somebody stalking her son. And it follows her trying to explain to her husband what's going on, but she and her husband are having some marital issues, so he believes that she's just doing all of this because she can't handle stress. Because she's freaking out about everything that's going on in her life, and she's a college student, she's decided to go back to school, and she is working a job, and she also is dealing with the fact that her son seems to have something going on with somebody or something. And it's the story of how the mother is handling everything in her life as well as whatever the situation is with her son. My only complaint with it was that I wished that we got more of that kind of creepy supernatural element with the new granny instead of so much of the mom dealing with a lot of issues in her life. I think that the storyline was very well done. As far as the flow of the story and how everything pieced together, like, I thought that I had some stuff figured out, and then it, like, completely went off the path, and I was like, whoa, okay, not what I thought it was. And then I did the same thing again. I was like, okay, I've got it now. I know what's going on. And then it did it again, and I was like, okay, not what I was expecting. And then the ending of the book really took me for a ride. So if you're looking for a really great thriller and you don't mind there being themes of like child kidnapping or, you know, that type of situation, like possibly having your child talking to a stranger or a ghost, as it were, then definitely check it out because it is so good. I really enjoyed it. I decided to finish the month with a contemporary romance. I picked up Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is a book of the month book, and I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. I thought that the relationship in this was so well done. So this story follows 2 authors. You have January and you have Augustus. And they both are published, and they both are living in these beach houses trying to write another novel. And January comes to this house because her father has passed away and she's inherited this house, and there's a whole backstory with that situation which I'm not going to talk about. That's a whole other thing. But she is trying to write a book, and she's struggling because she's dealing with grief, and she's dealing with some stuff that wasn't wrapped up when her father passed away. And she runs into Augustus, who she kind of has a grudge against, but he's also struggling to write, and they seem to have like a really good chemistry whenever they're around one another. They have great banter. They are able to talk easily despite seeming to have a grudge against one another. And so he is also struggling to write because he's dealing with some grief of his own. So they decide to write in each other's genres. They decide to swap it up, and they have a bet with one another. And the story follows them writing from each other's genres and basically teaching each other about the genre that they're writing. And then you have the plot line of them basically starting to have more feelings for one another. And I absolutely loved it. I thought everything was so visceral. The way that they handled their grief, the way that they handled getting to know one another, and their writing, and just the side characters that came in and out. I really enjoyed those two. And the interactions, the banter, just all of it. It was so fantastic. I loved this book so, so much. And I guess I was able to relate with the characters really well because I'm an aspiring writer, and it really spoke to me. Alright guys, that is all that I read in the month of February. This looks like a very colorful stack of books, as well as the audiobooks that I also read. If you've read any of these and you'd like to chat about it, drop me a comment down below because I would love to talk about it. Until next time guys, I'll see you later.